Sarah had always believed that she and Daniel shared the perfect marriage. They had been together for nearly a decade, building a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual understanding. Or so she thought. Lately, however, things had started to feel different. Daniel had become distant, distracted. He no longer looked at her the way he used to, and his once affectionate gestures had turned into mechanical routines. What concerned her most were the late-night disappearances. He would often leave home without much of an explanation, brushing off her questions with vague excuses about work or meeting an old friend. When she asked for details, he would grow irritable, deflecting her suspicions as mere paranoia. But Sarah was not imagining things. Something was wrong. One evening, after weeks of suspicion gnawing at her, she decided to follow him. Her heart pounded as she trailed behind his car, keeping a safe distance. He drove to a secluded part of town, a place she had never known him, to visit. Parking outside a modest-looking house, he knocked on the door. A woman answered, her face lighting up in a warm, familiar way. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she saw them embrace. The scene unfolding before her eyes confirmed her worst fears. Daniel was living a double life. But Daniel wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Sarah, too, had been entangled in her own web of deception. For months, she had been seeing someone else. It had started out as an innocent friendship, an escape from the growing loneliness she felt in her marriage. His name was Ryan, a man she met at a cafe she often visited after work. He was charming, attentive, everything Daniel had stopped being. One evening, a lingering conversation turned into a stolen kiss, and before she knew it, she had stepped into an affair. It was a dangerous, intoxicating secret, one she justified by convincing herself that Daniel had long since abandoned her emotionally. Now, standing outside that unfamiliar house, Sarah felt a rush of conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, guilt, and a strange sense of irony. She wanted to storm inside, demand answers, confront him about his lies. But how could she, when she had been living a lie of her own? The next morning, she sat at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug as Daniel walked in, acting as if nothing had happened. She had spent the entire night replaying the scene in her head, trying to decide whether to reveal what she knew. Finally, she looked up and met his gaze. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but firm. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. He took a seat across from her, rubbing his temples as if preparing for a confrontation he knew was coming. "You've been hiding something from me," she began. "And I know." Daniel's eyes flickered with something. Guilt? Fear? He sighed and leaned back, as if the weight of his deception had finally grown too heavy to carry. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he admitted, his voice low. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah." "Who is she?" Sarah pressed, though she already knew the answer. "Her name is Emily," he confessed. "She and we met a while ago. It wasn't supposed to turn into anything serious, but..." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I felt like I was losing you, and I didn't know how to fix things." Sarah laughed, a bitter sound escaping her lips. "You were losing me, so you decided to cheat? That's rich." Daniel looked up sharply. "You don't get to act like the victim here, Sarah." Her breath caught. What do you mean? I know about Ryan, he said, his voice calm but firm. I've known for a while. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Sarah stared at him, her mind racing. You knew? Daniel nodded. I saw the messages, the late-night calls, the way you started disappearing too. At first I wanted to confront you, but then I realized I was doing the same thing. Sarah swallowed hard. This was not the conversation she had expected to have. She had been prepared for a fight, for accusations, for heartbreak. But this strange confession of mutual betrayal, left her feeling more confused than ever. So what do we do now? She whispered. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, there was something raw and honest in his gaze. That's up to us. They sat there for a long time, neither speaking. Their marriage had been built on love once, but over the years it had crumbled under the weight of neglect, unspoken resentment, and now betrayal. They had both made mistakes. They had both hurt each other. The question now was, could they fix what was broken, or had their lies destroyed everything beyond repair? Sarah let out a slow breath, staring into the dark depths of her coffee. The bitter taste on her tongue mirrored the bitterness in her heart. Could love survive this kind of betrayal? Could trust ever be rebuilt when both of them had shattered it so carelessly? She looked up at Daniel, studying the face she had once known better than her own. Now, he felt like a stranger, someone she shared a house with, a history with, but no longer truly knew. I don't know if we can fix this, she admitted finally. I don't even know where to start. Daniel sighed, his fingers drumming against the table. I don't either, he confessed. But do you want to try? The question hung between them, heavy and uncertain. Sarah wasn't sure of anything anymore. A part of her wanted to walk away, to start over somewhere new, somewhere untouched by the pain of their betrayals. But another part, one buried deep beneath the hurt, still remembered the love they had shared, the life they had built. Why didn't you say something earlier? She asked. If you knew about Ryan, if you felt like you were losing me, why didn't you try to fix it before it got this bad? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking down at the table. Because I was scared, he admitted. Scared that if I said it out loud, it would make it real. Scared that maybe you didn't love me anymore. His voice was quiet, almost broken. Sarah felt something shift inside her. She had expected anger, defensiveness, but this raw vulnerability was unexpected. Did you love her? She asked, dreading the answer. Daniel hesitated. No, he said finally. I cared about her, but it was never love. It was an escape. Sarah closed her eyes. An escape. That's all Ryan had been to her, too. A way to fill the emptiness, to feel wanted again. But neither of them had truly wanted someone else. They had wanted each other. They had just been too lost to see it. So what now? She asked again. Daniel reached across the table, hesitating before resting his hand over hers. We decide, he said. Do we let this destroy us? Or do we find a way back? Sarah stared at their joined hands, the warmth of his touch familiar yet foreign. The road ahead was uncertain, painful, and full of questions neither of them had the answers to. But for the first time in a long time, they were finally being honest. Maybe, just maybe, that was a place to start. A year had passed since that morning at the kitchen table, since the moment their marriage teetered on the edge of collapse. Sarah had wondered then if they could rebuild what they had broken, if love could survive after so many betrayals. The answer, she had come to realize, was complicated. Some days it felt like they had made the right choice in trying. They had gone to therapy, spent months unraveling the resentment and hurt between them. They learned how to talk again, how to be honest, how to sit in silence without it feeling like a battlefield. Other days, the past loomed over them like a storm cloud. The trust they had shattered didn't rebuild itself overnight. There were moments when a simple late-night phone call or an unexplained absence sent one of them spiraling back into doubt. But they had promised each other transparency. No more secrets, no more lies, and for the most part, they had kept that promise. Now, sitting across from Daniel at their favorite cafe, Sarah studied him. He looked tired, but at ease, his fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee. She still knew every line of his face, but there was something different now. A quiet, understanding in his eyes, a battle fought and survived. "I got an offer," she said finally, breaking the silence. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "A job. In Seattle." He blinked, setting his coffee down. "Seattle?" She nodded, her heart pounding. "It's a great opportunity, a fresh start." Daniel's expression was unreadable. "And, do you want to go?" Sarah hesitated. "I think so." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. This was the moment, the real test. They had spent a year trying to mend what had been broken, but maybe, just maybe, some things weren't meant to be pieced back together. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then you should take it." She swallowed hard. "What about us?" He held her gaze, and for the first time in a long time, there was no anger, no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. "I think we both know the answer." Sarah's chest tightened, but she nodded. They had tried. They had fought for each other. And yet, sometimes love wasn't enough. And maybe, just maybe, letting go was its own kind of love.